Jean Young, and I'm going to call this meeting of the Finance and Property Committee to order. I am the chairperson of the committee. To my right is Andrew Kirkpatrick, who is secretary of the committee, and to his right is Chad Worrell, who's a member of the committee. For the purposes of those individuals watching at home, if you'd please introduce yourself and who you're representing. So Tim is our, go ahead.
Tim DeSorcy, Finance Director for the city. Dale Schuman, Water Superintendent, Water Light.
Jeff Kuhn, Finance Director, Water and Light.
Jeff.
Paul Seaver, Finance Superintendent.
Great. And
David Farnborough, Wisconsin Rapids City Times.
great, welcome. All right, so the first agenda item was to call the meeting to order, which we've done. The second item is the 2014 Waterworks and Lighting Commission budget. So I'm assuming, Jeff, you'd like to introduce that to us? Walk us
Sure.
through it?
Sure. I don't know how you want to handle this one, and again, Jem unfortunately had a prior engagement that he
That's
couldn't
fine.
make.
I figure since it would be like, if we had to have either the mayor or Tim at a meeting, we'd need Tim, because he's the crafter, if you will. Crafter.
So our budget went through the commission October 14th, I believe. Next steps here, and hopefully you got a copy last week. The budget had a chance to look at it.
I went through it online,
Great.
I'll have it in hand, and I did go through the PowerPoint.
Good. Okay. And you know, for future reference, if there's additional things the committee would like to see in here, you know, any advice.
Oh, yeah,
from
we're
the
gonna
commission
get
would
to
be great.
that, we'll
Good.
get to that.
Okay. And with me, I did bring Dale and Paul, the superintendents for water and electric, so if there's questions on operations on electric or water or capital on that side, definitely have the ability to answer those questions today.
Okay,
So, a couple of highlights in the budget, position-wise, there's a budgeted position for a electrical engineer to be hired. That position would be split 2/3 electric, 1/3 water. There's an estimated budget of about $60,000 for salary, and then fringe benefits on top of that. Also in here, and it's the one change that our commission made to our original budget, was for the GIS position. We had budgeted $30,000, the shared position with the city. The commission approved funding for that on the contingency that it's billed on an hour-per-hour basis.
okay,
And now
and we're gonna have a problem, because I'm not gonna pass the budget that way.
Okay.
At least I'm not, I mean, the rest of the council may, but I'm not gonna recommend it pass under those conditions. Beth Bakaniewicz, with HR, we go a third, or excuse me, you go a third. To try to do billable hours is, quite frankly, unworkable. Your billable hours might not be the same as our billable hours. How do we reconcile? How do we project? And my understanding is that at least one of the commissioners denied that this really was brought up to them. So I just need you to message back that if we approve this at all, it will be contingent that there is a third put specifically in. Now, I certainly would encourage next year us to take a look at that and see, I mean, if you wanna keep your numbers and we wanna keep some kind of idea, but it certainly works with Beth's position, so I don't see why this would be any different. So I just need that off the top to be, does the committee understand what we're talking about? It started off initially, when we got the budget, the GIS position was supposed to be 50% and 50%, right?
Yeah, I mean, this has kind of gone back.
And then it's gone back and
for a while
forth, and then it became 2/3, 1/3, and now it's billable hours. So I just don't, I think billable hours is just unworkable. It's, again, we can't do projection, who's keeping track of these billable hours? And again, for consistency with how we use Beth's position, I just don't see why we'd do anything different. So did you have any comments? Do you understand kind of?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, it's gonna be maybe down the line somewhere if a system was implemented which allowed for that to be easily tracked, but I think right now it's probably one of those
It's not.
issues where.
Right.
And if it's a new position that's coming out or. this is
I would certainly
yeah.
encourage us looking at it next year. Maybe next year we look at it and, we should try to keep some track of who's using the position in what amount,
Right.
but I
Projection
certainly.
wise, right now, I don't think we wouldn't be able to say very easily that you guys are gonna use that individual 75% of the time, and we're only gonna use it 25% of the time, so it's gonna take a couple of years for that to for that understanding of what that individual actually does to shake out and where it should be billed more
Tim,
adequately.
thoughts? I
Well,
know
I mean,
you
I know
had
that-
emailed me, and those were the initial, I mean, I think
Yeah,
I
the mayor,
emailed you back very
sent
quickly.
you, email on, what was that, Tuesday or whatever, last Tuesday,
That October 29th.
And those were, I think, my concerns,
Yeah,
right
and I
off the
think,
top
well,
of
cause I
the
know
bat.
he had talked to Jen about this and stuff, cause is that originally, it was 50-50, but then I know the mayor and Jen met, that it was gonna be, okay, we'll fund a third, 2/3, and then we'll do a look
Right,
back
I'm sorry.
each
said
year, and
backwards,
then
right,
I think when it went to
right.
finance committee at Water and Light, that's when it was changed to up to, billable up to a third, which
Which
to
is
me
what-
doesn't make sense, cause what happens, it's more
Which
than
is
that.
what's in the,
Right.
in that memo.
And
right
so,
there.
and then I think then the mayor contacted Jem again.
And
I
talked to a
believe
couple
it's sold.
commissioners who said that wasn't there, they thought it was still
Yeah,
going to
so-
be a third, so.
It is kind of an unresolved or.
So that's one issue, so I just need you to message that back.
take
That
that
doesn't
back.
mean that the rest of the council won't say, no, we don't care, we'll just take hour by hour and try to figure out what that means. I'm just saying, as chairperson of the committee, that my initial blush, how long did it take me to email you back, Tim? Probably seconds. Was, it's, whose numbers, whose hours do we count? How do we reconcile? How do we budget?
I think that was Mary.
Oh, maybe it was the mayor then, I
Yeah.
apologize, I thought it was
Like,
you. I could, well,
Yeah.
maybe it was that.
Yeah.
But I had the same issues, so,
I know we do get, billable hours on a lot of, city employees, the engineers, the street crews, and those kind of things. So I think that was kind of the model that, they were looking towards, but I can definitely take your information back.
yeah, take that back, and like I said, next year, if we have more hard data on either side, we can certainly look at it, but for this year, trying to get this off the ground.
Yeah, I think it's more of like, are we gonna go through as one city GIS?
Right,
Or is it gonna be Water Light's gonna have their GIS, just, we're gonna have, I mean, I think that's kind of the
right,
collaborative effort when this was initially going, is that we should just have one city GIS program.
well, if I'm a
Since
taxpayer, I
a lot
don't
of
care
it's-
which
and-
department or whatever has their hands in my pocket, I want it to be used efficiently and effectively, right? So, that's a good point. But I just wanted to get that piece out, because I know that's gone back and forth, and to be honest, other than that one email, and I apologize to Tim if that came from the mayor, that was really my only exposure to it, so I appreciate you, Jeff, bringing it up and just putting it right on the table.
Okay. The other position that's funded in here is a $15,000 position for a filter plant operator. And that is to coincide with retirement of a current filter plant operator during 2014. So it's kind of having that cross-training time for a couple months just to cover,
Makes sense,
make sure we've got something
Yeah.
there.
so it's,
So I'm not sure, do you want to walk through page by page on this?
no,
or
why
just
don't you
kinda
give
hit
us
some
kind of
highlights?
the summary of electric, the summary of water,
Okay.
and then what improvements you're planning on budgeting, and I've been through them. I
Okay.
didn't see anything necessarily that completely shocked me, but maybe the committee did.
We can start on page 6 is probably a good starting point of the, kind of the rate of return for budget, for electric. Our budgeted rate of return in 2014, taking a look at what we anticipate our operating revenues to be, our operation and maintenance expenses, our depreciation, and our taxes, which is pilot and gross revenue fees, comes out to about 2.9% return on assets.
Okay.
That, in that number is an included 2% estimate for a rate increase during 2014 for electric. The commission approved a study, I think it was in August or September, to take a look at a potential rate increase for electric. The last rate increase was in 2010. And they're looking at a potential, probably like a 3 to 4% increase in revenues. Taking that, it'll happen sometime during 2014. We used a 2% number in our budget. Depending on when that occurs, conventional wisdom and a lot of experts say, you obviously don't want to go rate increase during summer when your rates are already high and people are paying a high amount. So either would be late spring, April, May timeframe, or early fall would be the timeframes we're looking at. We're really in the initial phases of gathering information and putting together numbers, so we really don't know what that increase would be right now. I can tell you our rate of return, the PSC authorizes a 7% rate of return. And that basically, in this budget, we're about $1.2 million below that 7% rate of return.
Questions on the electric side?
As far as that goes.
So water would be on page,
The water rate of return is on page 11. And again, the one thing that you kind of have to keep in mind when you look at these, and that's the one thing that I struggled with for a while when I'm looking at these, when you're talking about a rate of return, it's not a rate of return on your sales, it's a rate of return on your assets out in the system. It happens to be with electric, they're pretty consistent, they're both right around that $27 million number. Water, it's different, just because it costs a lot to put the pipe in the ground to get the water to people, but obviously the amount of cost to those water revenues isn't as much. But if we look at our rate of return here, we've got an average rate base of about $22.8 million, anticipating about $4.9 million of operating revenues, 2.6 million of operation and maintenance expense. We've got our depreciation in there and our taxes, which is our pilot payment, which gets us to a 2.77 rate of return. That number's decreased from last year. One of the big things in the budget this year is a $260,000 budgeted item to clean 2 of our collector wells, wells 1 and wells 4. And it's pretty pricey, but it takes, I think the last time we did this in 2011, we did the other 2 wells and they went from mid-30s to right around 100% efficiency. So it really is needed. It's needed about once every 10 to 12 years. And it's just that cost, when it comes up to have that operational cost when it comes, so. The other thing to keep in mind with water, the PSC allows what they call a simplified rate case. So you can go in 5 years after your last rate case, and they just give you a 3% increase in revenues across the board. There's no plan to do that in 2014, but the 5 years will be up in 2015. So depending on where
I'll
rates.
tell you, there was a heck of a lot of screaming with the last one, so I would,
I read quite a few of those
Yeah,
comments
I would
and there
be-
was a lot, so.
very careful about any, especially water increase, because what you're gonna find is, especially in the summer, use is just gonna keep going down and
Mhm.
down and down. Pretty soon, you hit that tipping point where you're just not profitable at all. Same thing, like you said, so you start to conserve,
Yeah,
because you
there's,
don't wanna pay. I mean, we didn't water it along this year, I don't care.
there's
Yeah.
always been a big, and it's
We didn't.
a couple different times now it's come before and said, we're looking at a rate increase, well, okay, but they're also doing these conservation programs, focused on energy and all these other different types of things, and we run into it, with the sewer maintenance.
Right.
It's the same thing, keep raising the cost of it, people keep using less and less. And then at the same time, I remember Jim was sitting here the one year, he goes, yeah, we're getting really good returns here, people are really going for this conservancy program. I said, that's really good. I said, make sure not to punish them for conserving by jacking their prices up. And then not even a year later, it went sky high, and I said, so.
A lot of that, a lot of that increase on the irrigation part was pushed on us by the PSC. So that was-
Okay. I actually talked to the PSC and they have a different story of that. So I think the commission likes to blame the PSC and they like to blame you, but I think there's equal shared culpability in that whole issue. So,
Either way it goes, no matter who is responsible for it, in any stretch of the imagination, it's, taxpayer opens their, an individual opens up their utility bill, they look at it, it jumps up and they're pissed no matter what.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
it doesn't matter who's to blame, and they're gonna go for the people who are easiest to target, me, Gene, you, so.
my phone didn't stop ringing for a month.
And, personally too, looking back, I think a 30% increase is hard to take, it's unrealistic, but I mean, that's why I think the PSC allows, these smaller incremental 3% increases,
Right.
a couple every 5,
Well, I mean,
every
if
5 years,
we
but-
need to, we need to, but I'm just giving you the feedback that I don't think people have forgotten that 30%
Right.
at this point, so I would just caution you. I won't be around if you guys figure it out. And then for improvements,
Improvements, capital improvements.
17, page 17? Oh, no, those are electric,
Starting on page 17 or 16 is kind of just an overview of them.
okay. Those in their small print.
Yes, it is,
Not
and we'll
good
work
for
on that
old
next year. The reason why it's small, I mean, over the last 10 years, they have made a number of improvements. If you take a look at the capital improvements over the last 10 years, Water and Light's made over $42 million of capital improvements. A lot of them that were definitely necessary. I think, 10 years ago, if you'd have looked at the reliability of the system compared to today, it's night and day, and it makes a big difference. And I think it shows with the amount of calls that we get and for after hours calls and issues. So definitely needed. So, kind of fruits of that labor this year, our capital budget is, like I said, the lowest since 2004 with the number of projects that we have looking at. So page 17 is our electric capital improvements, and Paul's here if you've got any specific questions on any of these things.
Anything?
What's this URD cable in the SCADA system?
You already came,
Yeah,
it's just underground primary cable,
okay. And what's the SCADA system?
a SCADA system.
Yeah.
Basically, it's electronic, we can start operating all our, breakers and everything, there's OSHA rules and that requiring, that we can operate our breaker systems from without being in a confined
Oh, sure.
space, so we're actually operating through the computer system.
Or remote access?
Right.
And it's giving kind of real-time updates as far as the
Yes.
system and, if there's an
Continually
issue.
gives us real-time updates. We have a SCADA monitor in my office actually, where we could actually operate the breakers from within the office there, but at the same time, it's giving us real-time what our kilowatt hour is versus the feeder breakers, how many amps are we pushing through it. If we ever have any outages, it's real-time, we can tell.
Shows you what
automatically,
transformer's
yeah,
down and everything like
what
that?
transformer, what
Okay.
feeder is out, yeah,
Okay.
it's really convenient.
Is that, I mean, I see both of these things, but the skater scan, whatever it is, 2014, 2015, 2016, is that, and 17 and 18, is that something that you're kind of phasing that system in, or is that
We're crazy.
phasing it in?
Yes.
Okay, how long do you, I mean, because we only go up to 2018, I mean, do you expect that it's gonna be fully completed by that time then, or?
Yes, I believe it will be, but, and Todd's really the backbone
Sure.
behind that, when it comes to the SCADA. I know how it operates and stuff, but, Todd's really the brain
Sure,
behind it, so you gotta ask.
Fair enough.
Skipping ahead to 2015, the A Street lighting
I was-
improvements. What
Over here.
what
Great
kind
minds.
of, can you just tell me what does that entail?
The 8th Street lighting improvements,
Yeah.
8th Street right now is just a menagerie of overhead wires. That circuit, all of 8th Street, has not had any improvements ever since 8th Street was reconstructed way back when. The conductor that's laying underground right now is all aluminum type of, conductor with a very thin coat of, insulation on it, and it's giving us nothing but problems. The maintenance costs alone for, upkeeping or trying to keep the circuits working is just astronomical. It seems like we're out there all the time. Our simplest remedy for that right now, because the conductors are in such bad shape, is string temporary overhead. That's why you see all that triplex from pole. It's gotten to the point with the concrete, with the condition of the direct buried wire and everything, that it's just more feasible to try and keep the lights working right now using an overhead system rather than the underground. Eventually, somewhere down the road, we'd like to reconductor and relamp all of Bay Street.
So, you all think it's realistic then, because I think that is really necessary. I
Yeah,
agree.
oh,
I
yeah.
mean, it's
It-
bubble gum and duct tape, it
Yeah,
sounds like.
it definitely
Um,
is.
So, you think you're going to be able to start the project then in 2015?
We're hoping, if there's any construction or anything that goes on right now on A Street that opens up,
You might start.
we might be able to get in there now. The difficulty was working on A Street the way we would do it. There's so much concrete, there's so much blacktop and everything, it would require opening all the boulevards from
Right.
basically West Grand Avenue all the way out to 2 Mile and beyond. If we go with the directional bore, they're gonna have problems because they'll be opening up the street, but probably not to the extent that we would. If we had to do it ourselves, it would be saw cutting and just trenches, so. You know, where the expense,
Right.
how do you balance it? But really, in the long run, it's definitely
It's
a
necessary.
must,
Yep, I agree.
a must be.
Okay. Okay. Moving on?
So the next group, starting on page 21, is going to be the water capital improvements, with notes following on page 22.
I mean, this really is a continuation of the last few years' budgets, right? I mean,
I mean, there is one issue is where their water main additions budget does not match ours.
And which one is that?
That'd be number one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There's two projects that we don't have in our budget that Tim has in his budget. It's Clavine and Fourth Street, so
Fourth and what was it?
Clavine,
Okay, thank you.
those two equal about 71,500 additional funds. I did talk to Jim
Mhm.
after I talked to you this afternoon, and he mentioned that when he talked to the mayor about it, that he reiterated that $500,000 cap on water main construction, so that's as far as I got today.
Who reiterated the cap?
Joel, John did, said that that was the number he was working with the commission to kind of stay at that $500,000 or below. for
Did
water main
commission
construction.
put them at 500,000 or?
I think that was just discussed at the meeting, that was the intent of the budget, to state those numbers.
So, okay, so the commission doesn't wanna go over 500,000 or Jim doesn't?
Well, see, that's where we get a little fuzzy.
The commission approved the budget at this level, at this number.
Right. But that's like the three of us approving a budget if we don't know the right questions to ask. And so where does that put us, Tim? Because we, with our activity-based budgeting, we've included that.
Right.
So our expectation is that that gets done, otherwise,
Well, it's either we gotta revise our budget or they have to revise theirs.
The Fourth Street, if there is a piece of main that we have any issues with, there is no services office like a dead end. That's why we decided to pull that off of there. There was no real gain to putting it in except for having it there.
Well, I'm not a infrastructure guy.
what page is ours on?
But it's, I do believe the Fourth Street, what you're talking about. So, yeah, the water main on Fourth Street,
What page,
East
Tim?
Grand Oak Street that we're talking about.
Yeah.
85. Oh, yeah,
Right.
85.
It's just-
Okay, I was so close.
Okay, that's the shorty there
Right.
up there by, on the hill by the church.
Right.
So we're looking at underground utilities portion, right?
Yeah, I mean, the water main there is 110 years old.
What do we got here, so, and
I
is the
mean-
water main that's in question or what?
Right. Our engineering department's is recommending that it be replaced. They're saying it's 110 years old if we're reconstructing the street or resurfacing it,
Right,
and all of a sudden, you do have problems, you have to rip up our infrastructure to get to your infrastructure.
Right.
And then once you disturb the integrity of the road base and stuff, it's never the same. It can shorten the life of the asset. And I think this is where we can, and Jeff and I have had discussions about this, kind of I think we need to get on the same page as far as how and when we're gonna replace.
I see that comes into a big discussion that we
Mhm.
had in the past where, okay, the water main hasn't had a break in it yet.
Right.
It's still, as far as we're concerned, integrity sound.
Right.
And you got other areas in town that have a lot of breaks that we haven't ever got to yet, because we've always been taking care of other areas. So we wanna try and,
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've had discussions where there have been water main breaks and we've recommended, and that hasn't been done too, so. I think that's where we need to sit down and really discuss, and, you know, at some point when you're reconstructing a street and the infrastructure underneath the street's at a certain percentage of its expected life, like I said, it's our infrastructure that you're
Right.
having to go through to fix your pipe. So, I mean, like I said,
I'm guessing
something
if
that
Jen
we have to-
presented it to the commission, they would approve it and said it needed to
Right.
happen. So how do we resolve this issue? Does there need to be a meeting? I mean, otherwise,
well, somehow we're gonna have to resolve it before we
right,
pass the budget.
right. So I guess, we
I mean, I guess I was
were
under the
discussing
impression that what we had in our budget was,
this. It was, because
Right.
we've approved basically
So
our
I-
budget, so.
don't know where the,
So $60,000 over the 500 mark.
Right.
What was the, okay, so what was the other one now? Because we only talked about Fourth Street.
Clavine,
Clavine.
it's on.
And that's a new building project, if I'm not mistaken, is that correct? Is that in here, or am I missing something?
It's,
Sherman, parking lot, Pearson, other projects, Levine Avenue.
no, page 7.
yeah, yeah.
So this
As I
is,
said, the next page.
and this one here, this is one of these things where a residential developer is requesting this done so that he can, well, you know, so that he can recoup his cost on the building development, on the property development, and put in the additional units that it shows. So without that, he really can't do anything with the property, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's, yeah, I mean, it's developing vacant land for development.
Right,
So I don't know, how,
Which is pretty important.
Yeah,
you know, if we're putting in sanitary storm street, not putting in water, I don't know how that makes any sense at all.
and the water main on that one looks to be about 22,000.
you know, I think one thing this process, particularly at the water mains, kind of taught me the first year going through our budget was the fact that, you know, these meetings do need to occur sooner
Yep.
and more frequent and have the right players involved with it and not
Well,
just.
because
back and
we're,
forth.
I mean, it's just gonna be easy enough for us to say we don't approve this, and then you're gonna have some issues when it comes time to issuing your payroll checks, because we're just not gonna pass it. So I don't wanna strong arm and say, we've already got our budget, we've been through how many meetings, and we're set to go, and it's been out there, it's been on the website, and now at the 11th hour, you know, we have disagreements about what projects should be done, and again, the reality is, all of this funding comes out of one funding source for the most part, not all of it, but. So, well, this does. I'm just not sure how to resolve this. I think people are gonna have to sit down. Otherwise, my recommendation to the committee would be that we pass our city budget as is and we just don't pass yours until it comes in compliance. Now, that seems to be heavy-handed. I don't wanna be that way, because I think we all have to sit down and be reasonable. But, you know, I'm just not sure how to make that happen. And this is not a knock on any, you or anybody, just to say that lesson learned. We haven't had this problem in the past that I remember as far as construction.
Not to this extent.
Not to this extent, right? So I didn't anticipate this either. And I did notice it, so. Okay, I
I
didn't
mean,
expect this
let-
tonight.
Are the funds available, it's to be able to be, you know, moved around in such a manner that both projects could be done and included in your budget?
They could be.
They could be. Would you be foregoing anything else? You know, I mean, so you do this project, you're not gonna buy this truck. You do this project, you're not gonna do this software upgrade. And I'm just pulling what, I don't even know if that's proper examples or not, but I'm just, you know,
It probably wouldn't affect 2014. The water department's depreciation fund is essentially at zero right now, so we're looking to start funding that again to have funds available for future projects. So, I mean, essentially that'd be the future project we're funding essentially
Okay.
going forward. So
And then next year, moving forward, then I think those projects need to be talked about starting June or earlier. Okay. So that's not resolved.
and I'm just talking here, but I guess for me, that's why I was always I'm always screwed up whenever we do these, you know, we get ours and then we get yours and we have to try and reconcile them. And it always seems to me like the easier way to do things would just be have yours as part of this
Oh, no,
document,
no,
you
no,
know?
no.
Well, and I'm just, like I said, I'm just talking. But, you know, then that way, everybody, if this
Well,
is
I mean-
part of this and it more or less
I mean,
forces everybody
theoretically, yeah, I
to
mean,
get
it's supposed to
together, you know?
reflect, it's just
Right.
that when the two organizations have differences of opinion on which projects to do, it's how do those get resolved, or if there is agreement, but then the commission changes something, and then how does that get resolved? I mean, this is the problem that we gotta work through and figure out how we're gonna determine, so we're not sitting here. I mean, because we could meet earlier, but then if all of a sudden the commission says, we're not gonna do this.
Mhm.
I mean, I guess at some point, the council could just say,
Yes, you are.
you're putting it in the budget, and I mean, that's why it comes here, but I don't think we wanna,
Well, I agree, and
Manage
that's
the
my
budgets
point.
that way,
No,
but-
I don't.
so
And that's
somehow
my
we gotta
point.
figure out, and we've
How
had, Jeff
the
and I have had
process.
discussions on this and,
Okay,
and kind of
so
developing
you're
some
gonna, you
criteria
two
on
are
what.
gonna fix this for us?
To one other
We
question.
need the engineers in
kind
the
of
room, and they're gonna fix it.
To kind of move backwards for a second, I mean, the mark of 500,000, whoever put that down, I mean, is that something that it's been 500,000 is all that's been allowed over the last, because I don't remember from last year or the year before. Is that all that's ever really approved, is a mark of
They've
top of
been,
500,000 for these projects on your side of things?
they've been higher in the past, and I think,
Yeah, last year was 529.
529.
with the pilot cost, I think that was one of Jim's main drivers was, you know, the cost of pilot going up, 12-15% a year on the water side. You know, that money again's coming from somewhere you had, so it's a net rate of return on your, plant and service, so, you know, you put $500,000 of pipe in the ground. According to the rules of how utility accounting works, you need to earn a rate of return on that $500,000 of pipe, and, it's hard to, gain that additional rate of return when water revenues are going down, so. So then you go back to the point of, at what point do you have to raise rates because you're putting this water main in the ground?
Right.
But I can take it back.
Yeah, okay, so that's another item, so we have the 30%,
Mm-hmm.
we have the two street projects, of water main.
Okay.
I can tell you, I have a third item that is going to be paramount for me to pass it, and that is that in our city budget, wages and benefits is included, and we wanna see that for transparency for the taxpayers. We wanna see that, or I do, maybe you guys don't feel the same way, I feel strongly that
No,
it should
it's-
be in here.
I mean, it's something that,
We have every other department head, every
Right.
other
when you look through
position.
the thing, it's, you see your operating expenses, you see your taxes, you see your depreciation, but you don't actually see you kind of see the car, but you don't see the nuts and bolts that actually make up the car.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things where, well, how does the whole thing work? Well, I can't explain how a car works unless we take it apart, and I show you all the pieces and parts.
Yeah, and that's the activity-based accounting that
Right.
utilities needs to go to, but we can
Right.
definitely,
Well,
You
we,
include a schedule
we
too.
did that too.
Yeah, and I
We did
mean-
that, but we still have, wages and, benefits reflected
We,
specifically.
we always have, I mean, this is the first year that we've received a budget on the city side of things in this manner, you know, and it's a lot more detailed than I
That's
remember it
awesome.
being in the last few years,
Yeah.
when, you know, as I've been sitting here. And it is a lot better than the first two that I went through, but, I mean, I'm not saying like, you gotta
Well,
get
this
into
is
this
good, I
kind of
mean,
detail, but
this really does walk us through,
it does, the grand overview and
Right.
everything like that, and
and it's good.
that's what it
But-
should do, I've got no issue with that.
So those would be my three things, I don't know if somebody's throwing anything else out there, would be the
So-
30%, the wages and benefits, and
I've had more issues with
finance.
this budget in the past.
So Gene, just to be clear, wages and benefits scheduled by person or by just in total, water, electric, common?
Well,
or-
I would like by position, just like we do, so
Okay.
this position, this is, you know,
But I'm grabbing city engineer.
Sure.
So position, city engineer, their wage, design engineer two, their wage, design engineer one, their wage. Or like when you get to police, cause I mean, you've got a lot
there's
of
gonna
line
be a
guys.
variance, right?
You know, fire department, like how it's structured in here, firefighter starting, firefighter 6 month, firefighter 12 month, all the way up to firefighter 5 year, and then water pump operator, so kinda like, those departments break it
By
down, you
department, we do
know,
the staffing analysis of the position and wage, and then we just do the
Because
historical
honestly,
staffing, so-
I'll tell you, when it's budget time, if I'm getting a phone call, and I had one today, those are the questions that I'm asked. I am asked those questions, you know, my social security's being cut. I'm getting a 17% cut because of health insurance, and I'm only getting a 1.3% raise, and I wanna know how much, blah, blah, blah. And I direct them right to the city web page and say, you know, the information's there. And it really is for consistent transparency. It's not because I don't even wanna get into who makes what or why or how. It's just to be part of a consistent budget, transparency.
the one thing that like, okay, in the mayor's,
Everybody's-
in the mayor's memo that he put out, he had said it looks like there's a lot of new positions that are being created.
Oh, that
and
was
there-
why I got the.
And there
phone call.
kinda is,
But it's actually only a half-time FTE. that
right,
is,
increase over what it already is, so I mean, it's like that,
Or a half part-time, excuse me.
yeah, well, 1/2 FTE,
Right.
full-time or whatever you wanna call it, but, I mean, so when you list it down, you know, okay, so we've got this many linemen, we've got this many people in, you know.
Actually, it would be helpful even, because you mentioned the new positions, just a brief blurb, and maybe it's in here and I missed it, it probably is. But those are the questions that we get asked, and if we have that information, it's so much easier to be able to say, well, yep, you know what, you're right, there is another position, but here's why it was needed, and certainly when you explain to us that, well, you know what, it's for planning, for attrition, and this is how we're doing it, total sense, makes complete sense.
We added 2 or 3 positions in the city side of the budget, so
And it was helpful to have Zach's memo,
Yep.
as I was talking with that resident, to say, here's what we added, here's why, here's what they're for. It really was helpful.
I will take that back.
Great,
All right, thank you.
alrighty.
So the last two, starting on page 23 is our technology department capital improvements. Page 24 following is the descriptions on each one.
I just have to ask this because it's such an interesting word. GIS orthophotography. What is orthophotography? It sounds like a mixture between some dental thing and,
I think those are actually the pictures that go on top of the GIS, so you can actually
Okay.
see the satellite
the whole
images.
Landsat over,
I was just curious.
superimposed over the street.
That's how it was explained to me.
Common, replacement for sidewalks.
Common capital improvements, page 25, real
Mhm.
fast.
Sure.
So replace and repair sidewalk and parking lot, 20,000, And then one, what is that parenthesis number on the side?
That ties to the.
That's the
page
item.
26.
Oh, okay, I got you, I was gonna say, are we really remodeling 6 bathrooms?
Just the men.
Just a.
Wait a minute. Let me know how that's gonna work for you.
I assume they have some weird question at the very end of the thing like that, but.
All right, so how do we wanna make this work? Because we wanna make this work for all. Have the same desire to somehow come to a consensus. Do we want to meet before, we are, guest meeting next?
We've got our committee meeting next week on Tuesday. That
Can
doesn't
we
leave
try-
a
can
lot of
all
time.
of you
to-
try to hammer some stuff out? I'm digesting this right now. I have the few things that I had thought that I wanted, but this water main thing is, I'm literally, or water, this is just something I'm hearing now. So, and that's my fault because I didn't compare the two. We've never had this to this point in the past that I can recall.
There was minor ones in the past, $1,000 or something like that, but nothing that ever came up in the tens of thousands mark.
Because we really wanna get,
We
we
can't
wanna
stand,
recommend
we can't
both
stand in the
budgets
developer's way.
approved, but there's gotta be some give because they don't match. It's just not gonna.
Well, was it, commission's approved it?
The commission's approved it with that one caveat on it, so in order to come back, that was with that GIS position to be filled out. At least was the motion that was passed at the meeting.
I would strongly recommend, we come to some consensus and Jim does his best job of resubmitting the budget to the commission. This is how we end up in this.
I don't know how that works as far as.
So the commission's gonna have to reapprove before it comes back to here, I would assume.
Well, I know a couple
I'm
of
not
commission
sure.
members have been spoken with, so.
I'm not sure what the legal procedure as far as how,
I
I
think
mean,
they
because if they sent
understand
us a
the risk.
budget and said they didn't change it,
Well, I mean, what happens? What happens if we don't pass it?
then I don't know.
Well, I think that's something we need to know. That's our BATNA.
I'll be showering down in the river.
What if we don't pass our budget? I've always wondered that. I mean, what's the BATNA? I mean, what is our best alternative to a negotiated agreement? What happens?
Well, our budget, you just pretty much close shot, you can't.
That's what I
You have to
mean.
have a
So, and
resolution to
obviously,
ugly
that's
tax.
not what we wanna do. So we need,
I don't know when the.
I would strongly encourage also, it would be helpful, I really appreciate that Tom's here tonight. Be nice, considering we have some discrepancies in the two budgets, if notice were to go out, Tim, if you'd ask Shane to do that for our next budget meeting, if we're gonna be discussing this, so that we can get everybody to weigh in, what are your thoughts, what do you think, here's where we're not. I mean, maybe everybody just says, well, then give up on the two projects and let it go, I don't know. But somehow we need everyone to understand the issues, to be here to hear the issues, and to give some direction. Otherwise, we have a commission over here, we have a council over here. And we don't wanna have a situation where we just have a stalemate and we'll just stare at each other and nothing gets done.
Well, maybe we,
We need to be responsible and do something.
maybe Tuesday be a little ambitious, maybe we can schedule a meeting the following week.
Okay.
I'm just trying to think.
You're
'cause I
just
know
spitballing it
Jim-
I'll talk to him and see, I think
I know the mayor's.
Tuesday's gonna be a little tight to get it done.
Okay, that's fine. I was
That's what I'm
just,
thinking, maybe, because I know the mayor's out the rest
yeah,
of
I
this
can
week,
tell you the
so-
12th, I will not be in town, but I will be in town on the 11th, which is that Monday, and I will be here every other day, I think that week,
11th.
but I will not be on, which is fine, you guys can. Yeah.
We could maybe, I mean, depending on when we can get the commission back together, that might be a later next week, that if, even next week Thursday or something, depending on when we can get the commission back together.
I know we have, at least one member who's He's way out on a work project, so. All right, well, let's plan on meeting next Tuesday.
Well,
Tom,
The
No.
the fifth,
the fifth,
oh,
first
yeah,
Tuesday.
for the
Oh,
agenda that you had, Tim. Maybe you could add to that agenda an update if there's been any discussion
Just
back
put
and
down
forth.
Yeah,
2014
I will just put the budget on there.
water light budget.
And then we need to get something out to all the alders for when we do plan on meeting, so everybody can weigh in, or at least understand, what the issues are. I don't know if you wanna co-author something, or if the mayor just wants to put something out and say, here's the pieces that we're not in agreement on. That would probably make the most sense, so that everyone has an understanding of here's the issues, so that they can come prepared to the meeting when we have it. Tom, did you have any thoughts that you wanted to share now?
Not really, I guess just what time you're looking at for Tuesday.
Next,
It'd probably be the regular
Is that
schedule.
when Public
Yeah.
Works was
5.
gonna meet?
right, you usually meet at 6, correct? So we'll meet
Yeah.
at 5,
Yeah, so we're looking at 5.
right before you. All right, so a whole lot of no resolution, but a lot of really, really good information. Again, I can't speak for the entire committee, but I really do appreciate the way you put the information together. It's easy to get through and very understandable, seems to flow every year, year to year.
And just kind of as an aside for this committee too, so everyone, I think, Tim, I think you're aware of this, but I know Jem is working with the wastewater superintendent as far as that whole joint meter cost
Oh, yeah.
and coming to
Oh.
working out that number and kind of reducing that number for 2014, so it's a little more palatable for everybody, so
Oh, that would be
I think we're close, if not, I think they might have an agreement in place already.
And
so.
I know you guys work really, really hard and you're trying to bring us, what you see as the right thing to do, and but if we can just somehow come to consensus on the two budgets, that it is frustrating to have two budgets that are contingent on each other, and we can't get to resolution. The taxpayers expect services, but they expect effectiveness and efficiency and fiscal responsibility too. Chad, anything from your end? Do you think we're moving in the right direction? You okay as far as, Andrew, as far as the committee goes?
Yeah, I can see, obviously we have to have more discussion on it. I don't think we can make a recommendation at this point,
So
from
what
my perspective.
So what I'd like to do then is to put these, so it probably doesn't even make sense for us to recommend passing of the executive budget, because we may have to have changes in it. So next Tuesday, we'll have
We
our
need to,
regular finance meeting. And then we'll schedule a meeting probably the following week to hopefully bring to resolution. In the meanwhile, like I said, if you would ask the mayor, I know he's out of town, but if you would ask him to put together just a summary of the differences so that the aldermen can have that, can understand what the discussion's gonna be when we do get together, I think that would be good. And it doesn't just have to be from the mayor's perspective, I mean, we want both sides of the issue so that we understand completely what the issues are.
as far as item number 2, do we need to make a
I think we just
motion
hold
of any
it
sort?
over,
Just
right?
put in hold over? Or
Yep,
held
just
over?
like we've had with the executive budget, we've had it on a number of agenda items and we just don't take action on it.
Held over, no action.
The items, I saw Jeff was taking notes, he knows the items that I had questions on and then that Tim brought up. So the same item, or same, I guess, verbiage for number 3, which is we'll just continue to hold that over until we can get consensus on the two budgets and make them one, in agreement. So that leaves us with item 4, unless anyone else has any questions, concerns regarding the budget process. Well, either budget. All right, then I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you seriously for being here tonight, and hopefully this will be resolved